Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the situation of the suffering church around the world. The Diocese of Rumbek, located in the middle of South Sudan, is one of the 6 dioceses under the Archdiocese of Juba. South Sudan came into being in July of 2011, the world's newest African nation. Following the peace agreement ending the Second Sudanese Civil War, Rumbek served as a temporary administrative center for the Government of Southern Sudan. Later, Juba was selected to become the permanent capital. Like most South Sudanese towns, Rumbek suffered significant infrastructural damage during the Civil War, in which an estimated 2 million people perished. To tell us about the work that the Catholic Church is doing in this region, it is my privilege to welcome Mr. Ernst Ulz, Financial Coordinator of the Pastoral Department of the Diocese of Rumbek. Welcome to our program, Ernst.
Thank you.
Well, it's interesting that you have been in South Sudan for several years now. What is your role? That's a long job description that you have there with that title. What is your role in the Diocese of Rumbek?
My role in the Diocese of Rumbek is to raise funds for the pastoral work in the diocese and to make sure that the funds are administered properly and our donors are getting their reports in a transparent way. And in this way, I help to develop the diocese little by little.
Now, when we talk about South Sudan, as I mentioned, it is a very, very young country with a lot of challenges, of course. The first one was evidently to achieve their independence. But even after the independence, after the Civil War, they are still facing some political and internal struggles and problems. Can you just very briefly describe us what is the situation nowadays?
I think the problems, there are very many, but we also have to understand where they come from. We have a country which has suffered almost 50 years of war. That means 3 generations of people almost don't know anything else than war and fighting. So the people have to learn how to coexist peacefully with each other. They have to learn how to resolve their conflicts without violence. They have to learn how to govern a country. They never had a chance to govern their country. Now they have to make this new experience, how to govern a country. So we have to have a bit of patience if things go wrong or not everything works like we expect them to be. This is one side. On the other side, of course, there is a lot of delusion.
In what sense?
We experienced huge enthusiasm for this independence of the country. It was a very clear vote. It was almost 100% of people who voted for independence. Now the people see that it's not so easy to be a nation. It's not so easy to stay together. And now fighting broke out, as you know, and all that dreams are breaking down or threatened to break down.
The situation that you're describing, Ernst, it is obvious that the role of the church is really crucial because we're talking about a change of attitude, a change of heart, basically, in people. It's not only about humanitarian help and rebuilding infrastructures. It's really about forming a new heart in these people. How is this going to be achieved?
You're right. I think it is very important that there are people and institutions who don't only think of emergencies, but who think of long term, of the future. In all the time of the war, of the South Sudan Liberation War, the church was always with the people and tried to give them values, tried to educate them, tried to give them health care, Also try to give them the gospel. And those things, I think they are very precious in building up a new nation, because the gospel is talking of reconciliation, the gospel is talking of taking care of the poor, is talking of equality of all people. So I think it is important to invest into the church, building up the church. Emergency aid is also very important, but maybe there are other organizations who are much more specialized, who have better logistics, who have more finances to make this kind of rapid intervention. For the church, I think it's more to be there with the people, not to abandon them and all run away, to think of tomorrow.
You know, I think we have seen this important role of the church in other African countries, like, for instance, in Rwanda, where the efforts for reconciliation, forgiveness, rebuilding, they have to do a lot with this new attitude of the people, and that's why the role of the church becomes so important. Talking about this, what are the main challenges that the church faces in South Sudan?
I think I can only look at the diocese I'm working for. If I look at the history of this diocese, it was founded in 1955. Since 1955, the whole work of the church has been destroyed several times. In 1956, the government of Khartoum chased away all the foreign missionaries, and they had to abandon all the churches and the schools and everything they have built up.
Why was this interest of getting rid of the Catholic Church? If the church was serving the population, why the particular interest of the government to get rid of them?
I don't know all the details of the history, but it was surely the opinion that there shouldn't be more religions in one country. So 64, everything has been destroyed. Then there was a short peace period from 73 to 83. People started building up. The church started to building up, started invest in seminarians. 10 years later, the war went. The next war started. Until 1997, it was not possible for the bishop to reside in his town in Rumbek, because it was always fighting. So everything was destroyed what was ever built up. So effectively, at least in the Diocese of Rumbek, the continuous pastoral work was going on only for a very short period of time, undisturbed. So our late bishop, Cesar Mazzolari, started building up our diocese from scratch, from nothing. So what is really needed is the environment and the peace and the freedom to build up our church so that the church can serve the people. Because at the end it was always, in the crisis, it was always the church who was providing health care when the government didn't function, was providing education where the government schools didn't work. So it is by building up this church that you also build up the society.
This is really something that we see over and over in different realities of Africa, that people come to help in the crisis, during the war. But then for the long run, for the future, building infrastructures and lasting institutions and systems, that's when you don't find that many NGOs and other institutions, and that's why the Catholic Church becomes so crucial.
Yes, of course there are also many NGOs who are doing a lot of good, and I think everybody has to take his place in the society and do what he is able to do. But I would say it is the strength of the Church that they are near with the people, that they are reaching out to every village through the catechists, for example, is a genius network which only the Church can provide. And being near to the people, you're also nearer to their daily needs, not only to their emergencies. No?
Let's talk now about the role of the Church in education. Why? Because education is one of the major challenges that South Sudan is facing. I think it has 80-something% of illiteracy rate. It is crucial to have an educated population. What is the Church doing about this?
Actually, that's true. When The last statistics were published after the peace agreement. It was said that only 20% of adult South Sudanese are able to read and write. Probably this percentage is improving now, also because of the work of the church. Yeah, to make a country function, you need people who are skilled, who are able to handle complex issues. But even for every single family, you are opening many more chances if you give them a chance to be literate, to read and write, to calculate. So I think the missionaries have always understood if they talk of the gospel, they have to give the people also the tools to help themselves. So in South Sudan, as far as I'm informed, there was a long period when the only functioning educational institutions were church institutions. In this moment in our diocese, the Diocese of Rumbek, we have between 15,000 and 20,000 primary school students in church schools. There is a contract with the government. While the government provides the salaries for the local teachers, and the church provides the infrastructure, the buildings, the teaching materials, and this is working very well.
Oh, so it's a collaboration between the government and the church.
It is, and it is functioning quite well. The only girls' secondary school in the state we're operating in Lake States is run by the Loreto sisters. Those girls who are finishing that school, they are still few, but they can make a difference in the country.
A tremendous difference.
Yes.
Women educated.
Exactly. So there is a lot done, a lot of investment into the future of the country, where we will see the fruits maybe after 10, 20 years. And maybe they're also not easy to measure, but it is really necessary.
That's one of the big differences of the church with the other NGOs again, because the church is there and will be there because it's for the people and it is the people. So it's not a matter of we're going to be here for a few years until things get a little stabilized. The church will be there forever. So that's the reason why they need to have this vision
Yes.
for the future. Now, in education, do you think that it's also a way to help the South Sudanese people to learn how to deal with conflicts?
This is a very important topic, and I know of some of our schools that they are really having programs of conflict solution, of conflict solution without violence. I think we are still at the beginning, but it's a priority. It is not only about educating to get papers and to make a career. It is really about educating people who can make a difference.
Do you have different ethnic groups in these schools, correct?
In some of the schools we have different ethnic groups. I gave you the example of the Loreto Girls Secondary School. They are from several states of South Sudan, and of course this is a field where they already experience that difference is a richness, basically, if you deal with it in the right way, if you appreciate the other, if you listen to the other. So already simply by sitting in the same class and experiencing peace
Right.
in this class gives them hope that it can be also done on a larger scale. Or for example, we have once a year we have youth congresses, huge youth congresses in our diocese with around 1,000 people. And they are coming also from different sub-tribes at least, or also different tribes. And also this youth, for 3 days, they experience that a life can be beautiful together. They experience that they're united in their faith. And this experience is surely a very precious asset for the future, because it gives them an alternative. While maybe what they usually hear in their environment is that you have to defend yourself and so on. No?
They emphasize this tribalism that might not be a reality in the day-by-day relationships of the people, but maybe with political interest or some groups trying to emphasize this, that is not for real, this kind of sentiment of antagonism between the tribes. What do you think?
Bit difficult to answer. I see people who have a tribalist mindset, but I see also people who don't. I just got a letter from a friend of mine who is in Nuer, and there is fighting in front of his door.
Just to clarify, Nuer is one of the ethnic groups in the
Nuer
region.
is one of the main of the ethnic groups which is now involved in the present conflict, which seems to be a conflict between Nuer and Dinka, although it is not that easy. It's a very complex conflict. And he said, look, when I grew up, my mother didn't tell me anything about tribes. I went to a school and my best friends were Dinka from the other tribe. When I go to the capital city, I will not look for my fellow Nuer, I will look for my Dinka friends. So who is telling us that we have to be enemies?
That's a good question. Who?
That is what he is asking. And I say it's about politics. It's about power. This is his observation. So there are people who, for the sake of the power, are risking to use the difference of tribes to fight each other. And the problem is that many people are not able to reflect how the powerful people are manipulating them. Also for that we need education. We need people who are able to reflect critically what is going on. So there is the fact that the tribes are different. There is also, sadly, ongoing fighting between clans and groups. But the sad thing is that this can be manipulated and used by people in their search for power, and that is what basically is going on in this moment, I think.
It is true that uneducated people, they're very easy to be manipulated, and that will always be a challenge to educate these people.
Yes.
Now, our support, meaning the Universal Church, to the local church, and specifically to your diocese, have been focused in the pastoral work, more than, let's say, in humanitarian and building infrastructures. Why is this such a priority?
I think if we look at the short history of the diocese and of the church in South Sudan, which I gave you before, I think we have to catch up a lot to have a functioning structure, to have our priests and sisters living in an environment where they can stay in peace and security, where our catechists for their precious work get a bit of remuneration. So everything is lacking in that place. I'm really feeling sorry for our priests and for our sisters. We have 5 parishes where there's no water and no electricity at all. So many of our common projects with Aid to the Church in Need are emphasizing on this, building up the basic structure of the church, the basic infrastructure, but also the persons, like the priests, that they have enough to eat, the seminarians, that they get their education, the sisters, that they have a nice house. So because we think that this has an impact on the people for whom they work. If you yourself are safe and you don't need to worry for what you eat tomorrow, you are much more free to serve other people.
Is the church providing any medical and health services?
It does. In our diocese, it is organized in a way that the health sector is acting independently, like a non-governmental organization. But they have, in all our missions, they have hospitals, or at least small health centers. Also, the Comboni missionaries, for example, in our diocese, in the middle of the bush, in a place called Mapodit, they have the best hospital of the whole state, and people are going there almost 100 kilometers, go in the bush to that hospital to be treated. So it is also very, very, very important.
The reason why I ask this question about the medical services is because now we have these 2 very, very, very important fields of education and health care services that are being served by these people that we are supporting, the nuns, the sisters, the missionaries, the brothers. So enabling them to help the others, it is crucial. And what do you want the Universal Church to know about the church in this region, in terms of your needs, in terms of your challenges? What kind of support do you expect?
As my field of work is the Pastoral Department of the Diocese of Rumbek, my personal main interest is of course the priests and the sisters and the catechists working in this diocese and in all over the dioceses of South Sudan. I think what sometimes we forget is that also these people have needs, and these people need a place where to stay, these people need health care, these people need food. Many times when we think of mission, we think only of the good, what the missionaries are doing and which they are really doing. And it's easy to support them if they construct schools or things like this. It is much more difficult to get support for the building up of the church itself, for the structures of the church, for the simply the little allowances for the priests and the sisters, that they have their little income to provide for themselves. For the catechists who are doing a lot of work on the grassroots with almost no money. So sometimes everybody wants to use the church for the work outside, but forgets that also the actors have needs by themselves. So this is a bit my main worry, where the thing is developing, if we really help to build up the church in Africa, the church itself, the church structures itself, so that she really can do the service on the people which she is supposed to do.
Do you face any particular challenges in terms of religious freedom in the area?
Actually, in South Sudan, that's good news, but up to now there was no observation of any problem regarding religious freedom. In South Sudan there are many different Christian denominations. There are still many people who have their traditional beliefs. There are many people who are Catholics. There are still also Muslims, a few. But in this moment there's peaceful coexistence, so it is not really a problem in the south.
Well, hopefully it will stay in this way. It was really interesting to learn about this reality of South Sudan, and we really appreciate your visit to our program, particularly because it is not that easy for you to come and share with us these very important challenges and realities of the church. So thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in another program of Where God Weeps. If you want to learn more about the reality of the Catholic Church in South Sudan, we invite you to check the information at the end of this program. Thank you, and God bless.